This week on MS Refresh, the big announcement was Mac OS Redmond. No, that can't be right. Windows. Nope. Windows 11. All that and more. Subscribe to stay in the know. This is the MS Refresh Show. Hi there, and welcome to the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show. This is episode 27 for the work week of June 28th, 2021. Coming to you from the East Coast, my name is Matt Wade.
And from the West Coast, but slightly lower than all of our friends melting up north, Sean Bugler. Matt, how are you? I have to lead with, I never know what your stingers are going to be. And so that one got me. That was good. I liked that.
I enjoyed that one, yeah. You're not melting on the West Coast. It's just the Oregonians and Washingtonians that are currently sweating it out.
Yeah, it seems like it's a 9-hour drive north, and suddenly things are really, really bad. We're currently floating at 71 degrees.
Very temperate.
Apologies for not doing the advanced Celsius math on that one to our international friends.
Freedom units all the way, of course. That's how that goes. It's warm over here, but still, it's warmer than where you are, definitely. But what's new?
Not too much. I'm back in the swing of things with school. I never stopped with school, but now I'm back to math stuff. I've got fundamentals of accounting and something. It was tax 102 or something like that, and then fundamentals of accounting. Super exciting stuff.
It just keeps getting worse and worse as you add.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. But it's supposedly my last math adjacent courses. I should have known not to pick a bachelor's of science program. But enough about school. How's your world?
Doing good. I got the notification from Amazon today that my book will be here tomorrow by 8 p.m. my time. So I'm very excited to actually hold it in my hands. And the agreement with the girlfriend was that the beard will come off when the book is physically held in my hand. So we leave on vacation in a couple days. So I think I'll take that with me, and we'll do a buzzing party for
live.
We'll see what it looks like. Yeah, right. We'll see what it looks like in the end.
Actually, this is a really great opportunity. I don't know if you know this or not, but I actually wrote a review for your book, and I'd like to read it for you here now, if you don't mind.
You are very much too kind.
Here we go.
No, God, no. This is going to be...
Teach yourself visually.
Here,
Here,
pull out a skull and speak to it with your monologue.
I've got it right here on my teleprompter.
Yeah.
Teach yourself visually. Microsoft Teams is a masterclass in simple, visual, on-demand learning. Matt and Sven hit the sweet spot of staying matter-of-fact in how they describe the various features and capabilities in Teams without handing in a boring tech encyclopedia.
I go on well with compliments, all right?
I go on, but I'm going to leave it there. I think you did a really great job. I think you guys did a really great job. So congratulations on finally getting to the end of this here.
Yeah, nope, I appreciate that. So that's the exciting news in my life right now.
I mean, that's pretty exciting, like having a book published by like a real publisher.
Oh yeah, not a fake publisher, right?
Well, I mean, there's Amazon Publishing, which is how I inevitably will be published.
True. Yeah. But yeah, so I think that's about it on my end. Anything else on yours?
Matt, we've got so much to talk about in the news. Maybe we should just jump right into that.
That sounds good. Let's do it.
This is the news.
There we go. I always figure what side I'm supposed to be on. Well, it's not quite our beat, but damned if it isn't big news in the world of Microsoft. The Redmond-based $2 trillion company announced Windows 11 on Thursday, and if you tried to join the announcement live stream they hosted and experienced technical difficulties, or you weren't able to join at all, you weren't the only one. But don't worry, we've got your back. 6 years after Microsoft called Windows 10 the, quote, last version of Windows, everyone's favorite motivational speaker, Panos Panay, the relatively newly minted chief product officer for both Windows and devices, leapt out of our screens to tell us, or no, to empower us, to take control of our dreams. Think about that. Take control of our dreams. He inspires me. We laugh. I'm a big fan of Panos. I think he does great work. Microsoft has described Windows 11, which will be a free upgrade for Windows 10 users, as the biggest change to Windows in nearly a decade, which, if memory serves, is right about when they announced Windows 8. Those are big shoes to fill, and in many ways, they've risen to the occasion according to some early reviews. Overhauling the user interface with rounded corners, a redesigned start menu, and a theming engine that, at least in theory, will influence not just Windows itself, but the applications that run on it. Word is that even Microsoft Office will take on attributes of the selected theme. To bring the focus back to Microsoft 365, however, there were a number of nods to the productivity suite throughout the live stream. So I wanted to talk about just a couple of them to get us going. The Windows Start menu, or Launcher as some are already calling it, will surface files stored in OneDrive and SharePoint that you've recently worked on, even on other devices, helping you to pick up right where you left off, no matter where you put it down. Microsoft Teams is now directly embedded into Windows with a new chat app right on the taskbar. That's what it's called, the chat app, replacing the previous Skype integration baked into Windows. Now, of course, Microsoft is also pushing hard on this idea that Teams is for families, too. After all, a family that screen shares Excel workbooks together stays together? Tagline pending. You'll soon be able to sign into your Microsoft 365 account, and the app even features a Meet Now button similar to the one currently taking up space on the taskbar. It's also been noted that sharing an app window into a Teams call will be possible right from the taskbar, and the ability to mute your mic, something we've all been hungry for, will be available in the system tray area as a one-click option. Support for Android apps was also announced thanks to a partnership with the Amazon App Store, which might not sound like a big deal if all you care about is Microsoft 365, until you consider the investments Microsoft continues to make in the mobile app arena, especially in Android. Remember, they've got an Android phone. It's not to say that they're easing off the gas on the development of desktop apps, not by a long shot, but it's not hard to imagine Microsoft consolidating some of their development efforts in the long term to create a more unified cross-device experience. The Microsoft Store is getting a massive overhaul, with the company making some massive concessions that are a far cry from their original our way or the highway approach. The store is going to accept submissions for Win32 apps, which are kind of our classic traditional Windows apps, progressive web apps, and universal Windows apps, both things that Microsoft has really been trying to push over the last couple of years. They also noted they'll accept any other app framework. Interesting. Specifically of note, ironically, those previously restrictive policies also prevented Microsoft from distributing some of their most popular apps in their own store. With the coming change, however, Microsoft will be adding Teams, the Office Suite, Edge, and Visual Studio to the store, which should hopefully reduce friction for some users anyways. Lastly, digging a little bit deeper into, well, despite no mention of it during the presentation, some eagle-eyed observers noticed that the core Microsoft Office apps like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel were sporting a new desktop look and feel. For those with the Office in the Web UI, if you're familiar with the Office in the Web UI, the simple ribbon is familiar. No word on when this change might start to rear its head, but given that Windows 11's release date is slated for later in 2021, with the dev preview being made available today to insiders this week, right? That might be a good hint. Buried in the excitement of Windows announcing Windows 11, major changes also coming to Teams. On Thursday, Rish Tandon, Chief Vice President of Engineering for Microsoft Teams, announced on Twitter that the desktop version of the app would soon be dropping Electron, the current architecture that Teams is built on, in favor of Edge WebView 2. Put simply, the desktop version of the app will be powered by Microsoft Edge. Tandon went on to explain that in addition to realigning the team's development stack with other areas of Microsoft, like the Office team, that this new, quote, Teams 2.0, end quote, would consume just half the memory of the current version for consumer accounts. And that's kind of an important note here. This change is going to lay the foundation for future benefits like multiple accounts and improved release predictability. But ultimately, it sounds like Microsoft is focused on testing the change with Teams' personal accounts to start, not enterprise. Now, Tandon has provided reassurance that commercial accounts will follow. There's also no word on what, if any, of those changes are going to make it to macOS anytime soon. More information is sure to trickle out over the next few weeks and months, and you can be sure that we'll keep you up to speed with the latest right here.
That was the news.
I know it seemed like a lot. Take me back. I've got one more.
Oh, damn. All right.
Microsoft is making available the Outlook browser extension for Edge to, quote, bring you the power of mail, calendar, contacts, and tasks powered by To-Do using an icon in Microsoft Edge, end quote. The extension is available for download today in preview from the Edge extension store and feels kind of like having a little Outlook mobile app in your browser. I'm not sure how useful it's going to be for you, but for me, personally, yeah. We'll drop a link in the show notes so you can check it out for yourself. And Google Chrome users, according to the roadmap, you should expect to see the extension made available in the Chrome store in the near future. Now I'm done.
That was the news.
Ooh, that last one wasn't worth acknowledging my mistake. The worst. All right.
Oh,
so
that was
I have a
great.
question about all this stuff because I don't talk about Windows or deal with Windows ever other than having to work on it. But like administering it, yeah. Am I mistaken, or is this Windows 11 announcement really just about consumer Windows 11 and not enterprise Windows?
I mean, of course it is. Like, I mean, is anybody surprised that they focused on consumer on that one? If they were going to focus on just enterprise and developers, they would have doubled down on like Build,
True.
or Ignite a little bit before that. But they clearly wanted to demarcate this as something that was really focused on the consumer side of things. I mean, even like Windows 10 Pro has forever kind of just been like a power user kind of pseudo business tier, but it's very clearly like a consumer power user thing now.
Yeah, I guess there was just so much excitement, especially about Rich's tweets about Teams 2.0, and every single screenshot, video, everything had no reference whatsoever to the Teams app like itself. It was all about the chat app, like basically the iMessage meets FaceTime app that was purple
Right.
instead, right? Like, so clearly they're trying to replace iMessage.
Very familiar.
Yeah, they're clearly trying to be, compete more with iMessage and FaceTime in a way that Skype currently just doesn't, and they clearly don't want to. But I saw no reference to commercial, I guess, or enterprise references to any of this stuff. And I'm looking at it going, well, nobody's going to click that little icon to go into their Teams, right? They're maybe for chat and whatnot, but. And then this is news to me when you said that he acknowledged that the 2.0 version of Teams for the dropping Electron, half the memory, all that kind of stuff is in the future. Which, how long have we waited for being able to reply on a chat in Teams, right, on desktop? Years now, literally. And I know they have to prioritize consumer at some point, and it's a good opportunity to sort of build a branch. They fork the GitHub code, whatever the repo. But I don't know. It seems like it's kind of a tease because they didn't explicitly say, "Oh, by the way, this isn't for M365 E, G, and A, licenses."
At all. Like, were it not
Right.
for the fact that they name dropped the little hooks where Microsoft 365 plugs in that are just convenient for normal people, they wouldn't have mentioned it at all. It is interesting. I think that one thing that I learned today is that Microsoft isn't even releasing an update track to Windows 11 from Windows 10 until next year.
Wow.
That they're going to release Windows 11 as a fresh install so that they can image it onto machines. The rumor is right now October. No confirmation from Microsoft on that just yet.
Yeah.
But that the actual, no kidding, I'm on Windows 10 and I want to upgrade or update to Windows 11 isn't going to come until early next year. So it's clear that they were, in some sense, up against a wall against this arbitrary set announcement deadline, and they went with just announcing the consumer stuff because that enterprise is going to be upgrading left and right.
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, there are 145 million daily active users on Teams. Like, I know they never split that number up, but I'm assuming the vast majority of those people are not the personal version of Teams.
Right.
So it's really not going to affect most Teams users to start.
Yeah. So what, I know you and I are both Mac OS users, devoutly so, but I know that, you've got a Windows machine. I currently always use Parallels to dual boot, or not dual boot, but to run a VM on the side for Windows stuff, because there's use cases, there's needs to do that.
Nice
What
flex.
jumps out to you from from a consumer standpoint? Is there anything that felt interesting, useful, exciting?
So I think that the UI updates, the sort of the glassy look and feel to all the apps and whatnot, I think is a beautiful update. I think that it is a bit reminiscent of probably, I guess, iPad OS would be what I would reference, not necessarily iOS because it's much smaller on an iPhone. But that whole blurring what's behind you and sort of seeing through it, I think that's new to Windows, but it's definitely not new to the Mac system at least, or the Apple system. Definitely like
talking
that.
about the transparency? Well, it's new if you don't count Windows 7 or Vista.
Oh, did they have that in that? I never used 7.
Yeah, well, they had it in Vista, and it was just horrible. So they eased off the gas on it a little bit with Windows 7.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
But no, there's a return to form on that.
Fair enough. This is my exposing further my lack of knowledge on Windows itself. Other than I use it for work, and that's fine. So I think that looks just really, really nice. It's interesting that they went to the center. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for the discussion on the launcher, whatever you want to call it. It's really the taskbar moved over, right? The buttons on the taskbar moved over to the center, and when somebody said, "Boy, that's a lot like Mac OS. Why are we doing that?" I would have loved to have heard the debate that goes on, because I've made suggestions that are less impactful or less obviously, I'm going to say, a copy, for lack of a better term, and been shot down for things that are not nearly as notable. So I would love to have heard that discussion. I realize you can push it back to the left side if that's your preference, but I think the center is probably just a good idea, because the bigger screens that there are out there, and obviously I want to jump between tablets and full size experiences, home offices or big screens in offices, you always are able to get to your dock or your taskbar quicker because it's in the middle, as opposed to having to jump around back and forth. But I don't know, I'd love to have been in that discussion.
Yeah, so you hit on an interesting point here. So you can, it's currently the launcher content is centered. You can push it off to the left-hand side. But what you can't do, interestingly enough, is you can't do what I think has been kind of a mainstay of Windows customization since at least 98, has been the ability to move the taskbar to the left side of the screen, the right side of the screen, or even the top. You can't do that right now in Windows 10. So it's interesting that they've stripped that functionality out, in addition to some things that nobody cared about, like the tablet UI.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, because you can do that in Mac OS. You can put it on the sides as well. That's an interesting concept. The other thing I really liked was the snapping grids. That is a really, really nice feature, and I'm kind of surprised that Apple hadn't rolled that out a while ago with any of the Mac OS versions. I do like the snapping in Mac OS better, because it's those desktops that are separate. You kind of four-finger swipe back and forth. Right. You can do that with Windows 10 too. It's very similar, but not the same. And I do like the minor difference that Mac OS offers over Windows. Which is where it kind of really takes over that screen. But the snapping on Windows is more, you snap it to the edge, pick the other thing, and it stays on that one desktop unless you force it otherwise. But I do like that whole, you could have 3 things open, 4 things open, and by the way, if you unplug your device, it's going to remember where those things are. Now, I don't have a problem with my I don't have a problem with my MacBook. I bounce between 2 monitors here, and I have a co-working space that I go to every so often, and I just have a single monitor that I plug into. And I've never had a problem with my Windows on Mac. I don't know if that's really new, or if it's just the fact that you can do 3, those different grid layouts are new. But yeah,
I think it's going to be big. I mean, I think that Apple's done a good job of coasting on the fact that they just do, ostensibly virtual desktops. But it does seem like Microsoft is actually trying to create pseudo GPS coordinates for these things, so that when you unplug or plug back in, that it is actually holding on to it. And I think this is such a great example of some of the benefits of truly and honestly making Microsoft eat their own dog food.
Yeah, right.
They're working from home.
I'm always in favor of.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's just the product gets immeasurably better. Teams is immeasurably better. It's not where it needs to be, but immeasurably better than it was when we started. Definitely, in the middle of this pandemic. It sucks that that's how we had to go about it, but it just goes to show that they weren't putting themselves through that experience.
I could not have said that any better. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, it sucks that we had to go through the entire pandemic for the dog food experience to really push the development that much faster and more, prioritization of the right features. But you're totally right about that. Yeah, definitely.
Now I'm curious, we kind of briefly glazed over the teams being baked into it here, and you're skeptical. You don't think that that's necessarily going to be something that people tap into on the enterprise side of things. I'd love to hear more.
Well, so I think that, bringing in the consumer version of Teams, which, they're making a huge push for, I think that the branding of Teams has been bad enough since day one. It's even worse for the consumer side because it's teams, not, get together with mom and dad and check in so they can see
It's
the
not
grandkids.
families.
Yeah, or anything else, Zoom is not an actual word that references the action being taken place, but like it's at least abstract enough that you can apply it and just run with it, and it gets enough, I don't know, brand recognition or brand awareness, and Zoom is just Zoom. But like Teams, the word is specific, like implies a specific action or a specific experience, and that's not going to be what people go for. And I think that's probably why they got rid of the Teams icon in that new app, or whatever you want to call the shortcut to the Teams experience. Sure, there's a little mini one at the bottom of the menu that pops up when you have your chats, but it's not very obvious. You have to like take the next step to, maybe I want to use this app. What is it called? Oh, Teams. When it comes to the enterprise, if they are going to have the integration with Teams that strong, which I don't know, like when I get if you get a Mac at work, it's going to have iMessage and FaceTime on it, unless, the IT admins disable it. But like you can still install Teams. So you have those two separate experiences. And like, if you're a Mac shop, iMessage is probably going to be a great way for people to keep in touch with each other. And FaceTime is a good way to keep in touch as well. But with the Windows Teams experience, I don't know if IT admins everywhere are just going to disable that personal connection, or if it's just not, or if it's going to connect to, if you're logged in with a work or school account, hey, that new app is now going to connect to your work or school account. That would probably be best, but it's still going to be that much more adoption and training to say, hey, this little purple, iMessage bubble now connects you to Teams in a quicker way, and also you can open up Teams separately. So I guess we'll see what happens there. But at the same time, maybe you do use Teams personal and you want to have access to be able to send your, family or spouse or child a message via Teams app. Who knows?
I mean, Microsoft has been beating this drum for 6 or 7 years now, since SkyDrive, where you've been able to, where you've been able to, you sign into your enterprise option, but you are also able to sign into your personal OneDrive.
Right.
And Microsoft has been trying to find it. Honestly, I think it's insidious, but but they've been creating all these. Yeah, they've been creating all these different hooks where people can bring their personal aspects into enterprise software, and I don't like it. You see them trying to empower the user, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoy the kind of the demystification, or to kind of like declaw IT from doing things just to turn them off. Like I think that, and you go through this in your current role, where IT is just a little too precautious to the point that the ball never moves forward. But I don't know, like we've got to find a middle ground that isn't just, let's slip a personal version of this into every product we make. What's next? Are we going to be able to, we can already do Power Automate licenses off our own credit cards. Are we going to be doing an entire Power Platform that's just next to our enterprise implementations of it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. So what do you think about jumping over to some comments quick? So here's one that I don't have any real experience in, but I thought it was an interesting comment regardless. So hardware stock and availability is a major headache and cost point. Consumers don't have the budget for this kind of hardware needed in Win 11. And I wonder also enterprises, what happens here? What are your thoughts?
So, this is something we didn't talk about in all of this here, because, we try to keep this kind of focused on Microsoft 365, but there's a huge hubbub happening right now with respect to the fact that Windows 10 seemingly is going to require something called TPM 2.0, which is a little hardware chip. I think I forget what they call it, the Secure Enclave on Mac OS, same concept, which is this idea that it's a physical chip separate from everything else that can store encrypted content, so that, the malicious actors can't just compromise the OS and have access to everything. But this is a hardware conversation we're having now, which means that we can have machines that have 7th generation processors, that have 32 gigabytes of RAM, that have all these things going for them, but don't have that TPM chip, and they suddenly can't run Windows. It's not an experiential issue. This is a philosophical issue they're making here. Yeah. And, I certainly don't want to say that I'm taking a stand either way. I understand where Microsoft is coming from. Right. They're taking a beating with respect to security. But the case to make right now is that they're rolling out an OS for the first time in 6 years that is going to require new hardware for some enterprises, for some people, at the height of the biggest silicon shortage in our history.
Yes.
You know, like we're talking about, you know, this peak issue right here in terms of supply chain.
Yeah.
But we're also talking about the fact that people are going to have perfectly good computers and they're going to want that new shiny Windows that Microsoft is going to advertise to hell and back. And I'm going to go throw away my Lenovo that I've had for 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I have a Mac.
No, right. Right.
So it's a good point.
Yeah, you're right. The silicon situation right now is really going to hit that, actually, which, I mean, they've had I guess it's only more of a recent issue, or at least the impacts of the issue have been more recent, but like, it's been clear that silicon, chips were not going to be available months ago, 6-9 months ago, like it could have been planned for potentially, and the design team could have taken that into consideration, or they've discussed it and said the risk isn't worth it. We'll take the bad PR for it for a year until things are back to, normal-ish, and everybody can then upgrade, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you can already see the cracks starting to form. We're going to see compromises left and right. But, as to whether Microsoft is going to truly stick to the talking point of TPM 2.0 as being like a must-have, I think it's probably going to be here for the long haul.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, just kind of a broad question here. Windows 11 does look nice. Is it viable? I mean, is it enough? To you, I'm curious, does it feel like they've made enough changes to validate a jump from 10 to 11? Bear in mind, again, like they, for real, said this is the last version of Windows ever 6 years ago. Now, I know that leadership has changed, but is it enough to break that, to come back and say this is Windows, we're taking it to 11?
I don't know why Microsoft keeps saying this is the last anything. I feel like that's just really, really poorly planned out for that. And then, they always say the SharePoint Online is the last migration you'll ever have to do, and I'll bet my annual salary that at some point there'll have to be some sort of move, migration, whatever else, somewhere along the lines because of a system change or major new option that replaces Teams and Outlook in 10 years that requires all that stuff. So I don't even know why they would ever say that. It's just very, very poor wording to choose, I think. I think based on what I've seen, the demos and what the UI looks like, I think it looks really nice. I think it's going to be a pleasant improvement over the status quo, especially once Teams in the enterprise gets the benefit of being built on Edge as opposed to Electron, just because the amount of resources that's just being pissed away on Teams constantly can be spent on something else like Chrome. But if you're using, a VDI solution, running virtual machines in Citrix, a lot of those tools compete with Teams on resources, and that tool always wins because it has to win so that you can actually get into the virtual machine and use Windows, right? And now Teams can potentially actually have some of its good features popping through in the virtual machine because, hey, it's going to take up half the memory and potentially less, CPU resources and whatnot, which would be a welcome change. In addition to the fact that I'm sure those systems or those tools, those VDI options are being upgraded to, share the love, I guess, or the resources among all the other apps. So do I think it's viable? I think so. I think it looks great. I think it's a nice change. I think, some of the built-in integrations of Windows to O365 and other apps is going to be nice. Is it groundbreaking? No, is it an XP to 7 sort of delta? We'll just skip Vista in that description.
Well, no, but that actually
not.
is a good point. I mean, does it break the TikTok rhythm of really good OS, really bad OS?
You're right.
Really
That's
good
true.
Really
XP
bad.
Vista 7, so good, bad, good. 8, not great, right?
10,
and then 10
so bad
good.
we skipped a number.
Right. So, yeah. So is 11 going to follow the pattern of bad? I don't know. I guess we'll see. It looks nice, but then again, 7 or Vista looked nice from the outsider perspective as well. But I didn't really use Vista. I just only heard the reviews about how bad it was. So
I used Vista. It was
pull one out. Yeah,
right up there with Windows Millennium.
Oh yeah, me. I remember that.
So here we go. This is an interesting one here. Might be worth keeping an eye on Windows Virtual Desktop, aka Azure Virtual Desktop. They just rebranded that in case anybody missed that. This idea that maybe Microsoft is going to take advantage of this as an opportunity to say, hey, you don't have the hardware for it. And we've already seen them mention it in some of their early marketing for the dev preview, that you can use Azure Virtual Desktops to access this. So, I mean, are we getting towards headless, where you can just have now I don't know if you use these, but I've taught at places where they have, the little hockey puck that is just an Ethernet port, a relatively functional processor, a gigabyte of RAM, if that, and it just connects to the internet, and you get it through that experience.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if that is a play Microsoft tries to make for enterprises. I don't think a lot of corporate corp nets have positioned themselves in a way to support an entire organization doing that, but it is an interesting call out.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take one more, and then we'll sign off for the day. But this is actually two-parter. So, oops, I want this. So, is it really 11, or is it 10 plus ish, or is this actually the tipping point where end users don't care about the OS, just about the applications it runs? And I think that's a really good point. Is that an OS differential can stand out by having better integration with the software that already runs on it, right? And one benefit of Windows is that it is built by the same company that provides Office 365, Microsoft 365, and can integrate with those things. So, if you take polish to the existing UI and then make a bunch of integrations that are, more closely linking to the tools that you use on a day-to-day basis, that can be a real big win. And, that's not something that Apple can really compete with, because, I still have to run Office on my Mac, but it's going to be the, Mac version of Microsoft Office on an Apple ecosystem. So that could very well be the case. And I think just groundbreaking changes aren't happening anymore anyway. The Mac OS updates are generally minor polishing changes in the UI, a couple features here and there.
They're iterative.
Yeah, exactly. And I know they went from Mac OS 10 to Mac OS what it is now, right? I guess, is it 11? Do they call it 11?
I'm writing it right now, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. I know they're going by all the
12.
12. Oh, interesting.
Mac OS Monterey is 12.
Gotcha. All right, fair enough. Well, I think Windows is kind of similar. I don't think you can do a whole lot until there's some sort of paradigm shift in computing again, right? So from 2000 to, I think that's when Mac OS 9 or late 9s, early 10 came out, moving to, Windows XP, which was 2003, I think, right? I think I was using that in high school.
Yeah.
And then,
2001.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So every change is a little bit less and less, and I almost feel like you're asymptotically approaching some sort of limit of how good an OS really can be. I mean, in this one, Windows 11, they introduced widgets for the,
we haven't seen those before.
Mac OS Tiger introduced widgets, probably 17, 16 years ago. And I've never liked widgets personally. So to me, whatever. But it's, there's not a whole lot more changes they can have until, some Teams was sort of a paradigm shift, right, in collaboration in the enterprise. There will be another paradigm shift of things. People realize, there'll be new Slack out there that makes it obvious that there's another way to do work that's going to be better, and there's going to be new inputs, outputs that, whether it's going to be AI or AR, VR kind of thing, or whatever else that the experience will be. But it'll be the Minority Report experience where you're doing a little hand dance like the
hand dance.
Tom Cruise, yeah.
Trademark that immediately. Now, I want to make this last point here with that. Sure. I think that it is enough to make to validate the jump from 10 to 11, but I think that it does it in a way that we haven't historically expected, which is that it does it philosophically, because you see there are a lot of changes that Microsoft is making to how they run Windows, not necessarily how it looks, although it looks great, and they did dive deep, really, really deep, and change icons they haven't touched in decades.
Yeah.
But that they're changing the way that they run their store. They're holding developers to the same standards they hold themselves, which hasn't always been the case.
Sure.
They are really trying to play kind of the anti-Apple. And you saw it in what Satya's kind of final notes were. We'll see if we can find just him saying that, and we'll drop it in the show notes. But he is trying to draw a line in the sand that Apple is anti-competitive and they're my way or the highway. If you're going to be in our store, we're going to take a 30% cut. You can't bring your own payment processor. And they're flipping the script and they're saying you can do that. where you can use whatever app framework you want. You can come to our app store and you can bring your own stuff, and we won't take a piece of that commission. And that's gonna be a better experience. Android apps are coming, and Apple's been making fun of laptops with touchscreens for years now.
I know, yeah.
But with the M1, you can technically run iOS and iPadOS apps, but you can't touch your screen. And suddenly Microsoft is saying, hey, we're going to give you Android apps. And guess what? We've had touchscreens for 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah. Yep.
They're about to make Apple look really, really stupid. So I think, it comes back to, is it enough feature-wise to validate the jump from 10 to 11? Not necessarily. But I think philosophically, in the way that they're running the show now, this is a whole new ballgame.
And ironically, you're right. So the philosophy there, which is not all that digestible to the end consumer, is very different from Apple. But the end consumer, when they sit down, anybody that has an experience with Mac OS is going to say, the dock is in the middle on Windows, finally. And that's going to be the first thing that somebody notices. And I think the irony there is just kind of hilarious. So, all right, cool. Well, I think that's good for this week. Just a little programming note. Next Monday, is the observed Independence Day holiday for the U.S., so go America. And we are not going to be doing our show on Monday. We'll be doing it on Tuesday. I'll be coming back from vacation that day. Hopefully we'll be back in time for this. If not, Sean will be able to run this by himself. He's a big boy.
I've done it before. I'm great at it.
That is true. Very, very valid point. So with that, thanks so much for watching. As always, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Leave a comment below to continue the discussion, especially if you weren't here to join us live. John, thanks so much for joining me this week, and I can't wait to hang out with you and everyone watching again next week, again on Tuesday, not Monday. Take care.
You guys are getting a treat here.